Welcome into Straight Up Sports. I am your host, Devin Albertson. On this show, I start off the week talking college football on Mondays, followed up with the NFL on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, I dive into the world of Division II football. And finally, on Thursdays, I will tackle Missouri 8-man football. On Fridays, I will review what I talked about Monday through Thursday. Also want to make sure to ask you to follow Straight Up Sports on Twitter at show_straight and to follow my personal account at Devin Albertson. Straight Up Sports starts now. And welcome into Straight Up Sports. I am your host, Devin Albertson. I want to thank you guys for tuning in today to the D2 football edition of Straight Up Sports. I want to thank Mrs. Calfee. She's always been wanting me to do this a little bit, especially for D2, especially for Northwest Missouri State Bearcats. I know a lot of Bearcat fans, but she is probably the craziest of the Bearcat fans, and I mean that with all love. But it's time for D2 football to start tomorrow night at 5 p.m. The season begins in D2 football, and I am so excited. I love Thursday night football at the beginning of the year with D2. It spotlights Division II a little bit more because all the D1 games were usually on Saturday for that opening weekend on Labor Day weekend. So these Thursday night games give D2 the spotlight a bit here, and I'm really excited to see what this season holds for us. I'm going to jump into the polls real quick. We're going to start with the D2football.com poll. As you can see there, Minnesota State Mankato, they'll be number one in the preseason poll, followed by 2017 champs Texas A&M Commerce. You got West Florida, IUP, Northwest Missouri State around the top five. A lot of the usual suspects. West Florida last year lost the national championship game to A&M Commerce, so they're a team coming back who finished last year strong. You have Central Washington out west, Ferris State, Midwestern, Hayes, and Harding. A lot of teams in the same region there with Ferris, Hayes, and Harding all there. Harding played really well last year, made the semifinals, able to upset a couple teams on their way there. So Harding, that triple option, getting more national love for the GAC down there. Then you have West Alabama, UND, Colorado State Pueblo, Grand Valley, and Shepherd round out the top 15, as you can see there. For the final 16 through 25 is Ashland, Winona State, Sioux Falls, Central Missouri, Assumption, West Georgia, Findlay, Pitt State, Virginia State, and Wachita Baptist. I will get this right this year. It's Wachita Baptist. That's the top 25 for D2Football.com. I like to just kind of highlight their poll. I like their poll. I think it's pretty well done. But most teams use the AFCA polls for theirs. I'll use them both here. And whenever I get to my games later, if they're ranked, the first number will be their D2Football.com poll. The second number will be their AFCA poll. Just kind of the way I do it here for Straight Up Sports. That's top 25. It's kind of hard to make judgments on this. You haven't seen what these teams are going to look like in their 2018 versions. You're kind of just basing it off, well, how they do in 2017 and who do they bring back? What's their reputation as a school? Northwest gets a lot of respect in this because they've been the winningest school in Division II since 2010. If you go back to the early 2000s, them and Grand Valley State have been the best two schools in Division II, and you can see they're both ranked in the top 15 with Northwest at 5 and Grand Valley at 14. They'll both be in games at Spotlight here in a little bit, but you kind of see that a lot with the preseason polls, so you can't put a whole lot of stock in the polls until later. By the time you can put stock into the polls, the regional rankings come out, and that's what you really have to pay attention to. So being ranked is great, but you really want to set yourself up for the regional rankings later in the season, and getting high-quality wins now can help you then. So that's the D2 poll. Up next is the AFCA poll. This one's a little different. They have A&M Commerce at number one, which I kind of agree with because they are the defending champs, and until you beat them, they are number one. West Florida 2, Minnesota State 4. They have IUP at 4, Minnesota State at 3, IUP at 4, with Fort Hays and Northwest tied for 5. I think this is nice. Hayes last year won the MIAA. They came to Maryville and beat the Bearcats. They deserve some national recognition. They get that with that tied 5th ranking with Northwest, who I think is going to have a little bit of, after last year was a down year going 9-3, just kind of shows the expectations at Northwest Missouri State. And I'll get to them a little bit, why I think they're going to be a little better on offense going into this year. Followed by Harding, Ferris, Central Washington, and Grand Valley. A lot of the same suspects in a little bit different order here in this one. You see a couple teams down towards the bottom that are different, with Carson, Newman, Ohio, Dominican, and among others. A little bit different order for all of them as well, of course. A couple teams that are just outside the AFCA pool. They have the other receivings. You have Cal PA, Delta State, who I'll get to both those teams later in my games of the week. Westchester, Colorado Mesa, Bowie State, Virginia State, Duluth, Albany State, Florida Tech, Colorado Mines, Shippensburg, Tuskegee, and on and on and on. There's some teams that could be teams that you can see later on in the year ranked. Watch out for Bowie State. They're going to score a lot of points in the CIAA down there. They're going to score a lot of points down there. So be in the case there. I think for the Bulldogs, they could be a team that's going to be fun to watch. I'm not sure how much noise they'll make nationally because they play in a viewed as a lower conference in Division II football. I don't know if they actually are, just kind of the way they're viewed at with some of that conference's past success or failures kind of in the playoffs. But they could be a team that could be fun to watch this year because they're going to put up a ton of points. So that's the polls. I'm not going to talk too much about them because, well, it just kind of gets redundant. Talk about polls about teams that we haven't even seen on the field yet, besides if you're maybe a scrimmage or so, an inter-squad scrimmage in spring games. I mean, you just don't know going in the year. But we're going to get right to the games. I also want to remind you to please follow Straight Up Sports on Twitter at @show_straight and follow my Twitter account at Devin Albertson. I'd be appreciated if you do that. All of my shows are on @show_straight on Twitter. It'll be a stream of those on the Twitter feed. It's all its account's going to be used for is links to shows. That way it's nice and clean. If you want to find one, that's where you're going to go to find it. Thank you for bearing with me as I'm a little bit late going in this Wednesday to posting this one, but it's going to be up. Game 1's the game that I'll be at tomorrow night. I'm a graduate of Northwest Missouri State. I'm going to be at the Northwest versus Missouri Western game. Rivalry week is in week 1 this year. It's been in the season finale in the past, but if you look at this, all these stats and records are from last year. So you have Missouri Western 4-7 last year, Northwest 9-3, made the playoffs, lost to Ashland in the first round on the road. Last year, these two teams met in St. Joe. Northwest won 30-0. That defense played so well, and I expect that to happen again this year. Northwest defense is just so elite with Coach Wright there. I don't think ever doubt Northwest defense as long as Coach Wright is there at Northwest. He just has something special with that defense, especially the D-line. He can coach those guys up. I have zero doubts about the Northwest defense. My doubts are with the Northwest offense and Missouri Western. We'll get to them here in a second. They were picked to finish 9th in the MIAA. Their quarterback will be Don Marino, according to their depth chart they just released the other day. Be interested to see how they come out. They really struggled in the season finale last year versus Northwest, but that could be over a multitude of things. They were kind of out of it at that point. I mean, you go into the game at 4-6, you're not making the playoffs, you're not making a bowl game. All you have up is the rivalry aspect, and they just couldn't quite reach the level they needed to compete in that game. And I don't know if they'll be able to this year, but as the first game of the year, you have a little more hope in week 1 at 0-0 than you do in week 11 at 4-6. So maybe they'll be a little more juiced up for this game. Should be a fun atmosphere there in Maryville, though. Northwest is a 20.5 point favorite, according to Massey, who I use for all of this stuff. They predict 27-7 win for Northwest. Northwest, they are the MIAA preseason favorite by the slightest of margins over Fort Hays State, who I'll get to in a minute. They have a new quarterback this year. Both their quarterbacks from last year that played quite a bit, and Zach Martin and Jonathan Baker both graduated. They'll have a new quarterback, redshirt freshman Braden Wright. He beat out Kowalski and Bannon for the starting quarterback role. He's mobile, but he's very unproven. We'll see what he does. I trust the staff. They said he's going to be the starter. I think they know what they're doing here in it. They're also going to mix up a few things with the play calling. Coach Osborne is actually going to be the play caller with Floor still as the co-offensive coordinator designing a lot of the game plan. I think this is going to maximize both these guys' potential a little bit. When Adam Dorrell left for Abilene Christian from Northwest, it left a big gap in the play calling. He was a really good play caller and was really good working with the offensive line. We'll see if the line plays a little bit better this year. They do have quite a few starters back from last year's team. But I think the play calling could be improved with Osborne. Floor is still really good at designing game plans and getting the team ready. Maybe just the in-game calling was where he lacked a little bit. So I think this will be a good setup for Northwest to overcome some of those shortcomings they had in last year's team. Also, one thing that's going to help with the game plan, the rushing attack, is Josh Caldwell, a transfer from Missouri Western, or grad transfer. He'll get the start at running back for Northwest. He's a very good running back. He was leading the conference in rushing yards last year before he left the team, and he led the year before as well. Caldwell is a terrific running back, and I can't see what he looks like running in green this year. They also have plenty of weapons outside of Caldwell for Wright to use, with wide receivers Bain, Massey, Sykes, Tatum, Keys, true freshman LaTroy Harper from Penny High School, and then running back Strayhorn and Thomas as well. They have a lot of weapons for Wright there. One thing also, I saw a really cool story about Massey for Northwest. Check that one out. I think it was Brandon Zinner with the News Press down in St. Joe. He said they had a story about him recovering from 2 ACL injuries and spending over 2.5 years, and how he's made his way back into the starting lineup for Northwest. From Lafayette High School down in St. Joseph, it's going to be a hometown game for him as well, playing his hometown's team there with Missouri Western. So that's something to watch out there for, but I expect the defense to be really good. One thing to look at, though, in the game is that defensive tackle. They're a little bit light there, starting Spencer Phillips and Robert Samuel. Samuel was a defensive end last year. He's sliding down. Phillips, I think, started as a DN. He's sliding down. So they have pretty much 4 DNs playing across the D line, as their 2 D tackles are both at 265 this year at weight. So 165, the other one's 6'3". So they're not those big mammoths you've seen in the Northwest D line in the past with, say, Braden Yost and some of those other guys they've had there. But they're long, they're athletic, they know how to use their pad level. Coach Wright's going to coach them up. Also, you have Eskew and Mike Elke on the outsides. Eskew is a stud, so make sure you watch out for him in the game there Thursday. So that's kind of what it is. Final thing, series record, Northwest leads 26-13 all time, including 11-4 record in Maryville. A little bit closer than I thought it was between these two schools. Prediction, I think Northwest wins this one going away, 31-6. Can't quite hit the shutout. Western has a pretty good kicker. They might get in field goal range a couple times and get a couple field goals in there, but Northwest takes it home, 31-6. Start the year off right with a win versus a rival, and Maryville should be popping tomorrow night. I can't wait to go to the game for the first time in the past couple years, as not calling the game for X106, but actually just going there and just enjoying the game. So make sure. But if you can't make the game, I will give a plug to X106, 106.7 FM if you're in Maryville. Also the TuneIn Radio app for X106. Listen to Trevor Mater, and I believe Ryan Elliott there on the call for X106. Should be a fun one there for those guys. Can't wait to see how the broadcast goes this year for them. Next game we have here is Central Missouri at Fort Hays. Central Missouri is 19th in the D2 poll, 18th in AFCA. Hays 9-5 respectively. UCM, they picked to finish 3rd in the MIAA. Their quarterback, Bowles, is a Harlan Hill candidate, and he is an electric playmaker. I saw him play last year down in Arrowhead versus Northwest. He's really good and really fun to watch. Northwest probably should have lost that game, but they found a way at the end to win it. The Mules are going to score points. If you look at last year's thing, they're 10th nationally in offense, 2nd in total yards, 7th in passing offense, still ran for over 200 yards a game as well. They can score some points, but when you look at their defensive numbers, that's where things kind of get really iffy for them. I don't really like their scheme there with the 3-man line they've used in the past. It's really easy to block for opposing teams, and they can run all over them. And they're just really struggling that side of the ball, allowing 29 points per game last year. They were in a lot of shootouts, and that's just strenuous to try to win shootout after shootout. Even in college football, it's really hard to win like that consistently week in and week out. So their question mark is the defense, especially the front 7. And if you look at Fort Hays State, they're picked to finish 2nd in the MIAA, just behind Northwest. Mazzara is still the quarterback. The Tigers are the defending MIAA champs. Expect a well-coached football team that is very physical on both lines. They do lose Nathan Shepard to the NFL. He got drafted in the 2nd round by the Jets, and he's playing really well right now in the NFL in the preseason. He was an absolute monster for the Tigers last year. They're going to miss him on the D-line, but they're so talented other than him last year as well. They're going to be good again. They're going to contend for the MIAA. Last year, Fort Hays went down to Warrensburg and won 35-6 in that game. Completely blew me away and put Fort Hays on the map for this season. If you look at this game, I think Fort Hays wins again, but I think UCM keeps it close. Massey has it 35-28, Fort Hays winning, covering the 6.5-point spread. I have UCM covering, but Fort Hays pulling out the win, 34-31. I think Bowles makes enough plays to keep this one close, but Fort Hays just too well-rounded as a team to lose this one, especially at home. It's tough to play out there in Hays, Kansas. First of all, it's an impossible drive out to Hays because it's just nothing in western Kansas, just absolutely nothing. So that's going to be tough for UCM to overcome that drive out to western Kansas, but I think Hays wins this game 34-31. Up next, we're going to stay in the region but move a little bit further east. You have Indianapolis, or UIndy, ranked 12th or 13th in the national polls, at Grand Valley State, ranked 14th/10th. Last year, UIndy went 11-1, Grand Valley 8-3. These two teams are fun to watch. Massey has a score 35-21. I think it's going to be a little bit closer due to recent history. I mean, if you look at these two teams last couple of years, last year, UIndy won at home 24-20. The year before, UIndy also won. So they've won the last 2 years by combined 5 points. But the last time UIndy won at Grand Valley was September of 1999. Even though UIndy is a unanimous GLVC preseason favorite, and they returned their quarterback, I'm going to butcher his name, so I'm not even going to say it, but he threw for 2,700 yards, 29 touchdowns, and only 4 picks last year. He was their offensive player of the year last year. He is another Harlan Hill candidate right there. He's going to make some plays. We'll see what they can do, though, versus the Grand Valley defense. You see it there last year. Passing defense, number 1 in the nation, only allowing 127 yards through the air last year. Third-ranked defense in total. They're a fun team to always watch, Grand Valley. I think they're the most winning since 2000. I think so they're kind of what they could put their hat on there. Grand Valley is a very good team. Very good in openers as well. They're 32-11 all-time in home openers and 17-1 since 2001 at home. They are very, very solid there at home. So good luck winning there. Bart Williams back at quarterback as well for Grand Valley. So both these teams bringing back their quarterbacks. They will need to replace Marty Carter, though, a very good running back for them last year. The series record is Grand Valley leads at 20-3, even though UIndy's won the last 2. I think Grand Valley gets back in the series winning ways, and they win this one at home in a very close game, though, 27-21. The Lakers take down the Greyhounds. Up next, we're going to stay with Ashland, who's in the GLIAC with Grand Valley, as Grand Valley is the favorite in the GLIAC. Ashland is picked to finish 3rd behind Grand Valley and Ferris State. They have a new starting quarterback in Billy Ball. They were very talented last year. I was really impressed with their line play, able to keep up in the playoffs last year. Even though they beat Northwest and lost to Harding, they definitely proved they were one of the top teams in the country last year by doing so. IUP last year, they beat Ashland in this first meeting all-time between these two schools, who are separated just barely by the Ohio-Pennsylvania border, pretty much. These two schools are really close together, but they're always in different conferences. Had never played before last year. IUP won on, I think, a last-second field goal, 26-23 in the first all-time meeting. So that was exhilarating last year. IUP made the semifinal last year at 13-1. Their only loss was to West Florida. They're picked to win the PSAC West again. They're 17-3 in season openers since 1998 and 51-33-3 all time. Another really good opening season team of the Crimson Hawks. Lenny Williams back at quarterback returns for his senior year, as well as 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen from last year, and they averaged 256 yards on the ground last year in offense. Expect that to continue this year. And I think IUP is going to get this one. It's going to be a good, close game. It's going to be tough to win in Ashland. Ashland, according to Massey, is a 7.5-point favorite. That's way too big. This game also is going to be ESPN3 along with the Grand Valley State game. Both these on ESPN3. So if you want to watch some D2 football on your phone, ESPN3 for those two. But I think IUP wins this one. Flip the score a little bit. 31-24, IUP wins it. I think Lenny Williams coming back is going to be too much for Ashland here. I'm going to trust the fourth-year senior over the new starting quarterback in Billy Ball in this one. It's kind of my reasoning for this one. IUP gets the win in week 1, 31-24. We're going to go to another PSAC school here with California, PA, going to Ohio Dominican. Ohio used to play in the GLIAC with Ashland and Grand Valley. They went to the GMAC, which is the Great Midwest Athletic Conference. Last year, they started 0-3, won their next 7 games to win the GMAC. Actually, they missed the playoffs, though, because they lost those first 3 games, which is a Bummer for them, but they're gonna score some points. You see, last year scored 39.5 points per game, over 500 yards of total offense per game, and over almost 350 yards of passing per game. Both top 5 in the nation. They're going to be a team that slings the ball all over the yard and have fun while doing it. Going to push the ball up and down the field. So they're going to be a fun team to watch this year. Are the Panthers. The Vulcans, on the other hand, they're picked to finish second in the PSAC West behind IUP, but they need to improve defensively going into next year. They were 142nd against the pass last year, allowing almost 250 yards per game there. They need to improve in that respect if they want to challenge IUP in the PSAC among other schools. They'll be starting a freshman quarterback as well, redshirt freshman Noah Mitchell. I think it's their first freshman quarterback starting since 2004, so a little bit of a different situation there for Cal PA. For Ohio Dominican, they're the favorites to win the GMAC, and their quarterback, I didn't really see who their starter was, but it's come down to either Shane Buceno or freshman Evan Erst at quarterback, so we'll kind of see where they go there. Last year was their first all-time meeting. Cal won 36-34, and I think they win the second matchup as well, 41-38, even though Massey has Ohio Dominican winning 31-27. Dominican is a 4.5-point favorite in this one. In our last game of the week, we have Delta State at Tarleton State. Delta State, as well as Cal PA, were receiving votes in the AFCA poll. I had Delta State actually winning this one. They're picked to finish 4th in the Gulf South Conference behind the 3 Western schools, Western Alabama, West Florida, and West Georgia. So that's kind of what they're picked right there, is picked 4th behind those 3 schools who are really good. The Gulf South is always really tough down there. A lot of good quality schools and good quality football played down there. Dual threat quarterback will be back. Ruddock this year will lead the Statesman offense. They're going to run the ball. They're going to want to run the ball a lot and even more and then some more. They averaged 230 yards on the ground last year, 15th best in the nation. That's what they do well. Expect them to do that again this year. You look at Tarleton State, they're pinning to finish 5th in the Lone Star Conference behind A&M Conference, the defending champs. Midwestern State's been really solid. Eastern New Mexico in that triple option VR offense, and then Angelo State picked ahead of them, but they're going to be right in the mix there with the final 2 schools with Eastern New Mexico and Angelo. They'll have a new quarterback, most likely Derek Kaiser will start for them. He's going to be a senior this year. Last year was the 3rd all-time meeting between the 2 schools. Delta State won that one 34-26 and leads the all-time series 3-0. Massey has this one 30-24 Delta. I think Delta wins it a little bit more scoring though, 38-27. The Statesmen take down the Texans in this one. So that's what I have for Week 1 in Division II football. I am so excited for the season to start. I love D2 football. It's very fun to watch these kids because you can tell they're there for the love of the game. Most of these kids aren't going to the NFL, even though some can and some have. But a lot of them are there just because they love football, they love to compete, they want to win. This is where I love football because it's very pure for the sport. I love it. Should be fun. I'll be at Northwest versus Missouri Western. If you see me, come up, talk to me. Feel free to talk about Division II football or any other football for that matter. Also, make sure to tune in to X106 if you can't make the game, 106.7. They always have pretty good coverage of the game. They should have the pregame show out there at the Pavilion if you want to check that out as well. Near the Hughes Fieldhouse is where it should be there. So that should be fun. Shout out to KNWT for always broadcasting all that stuff and making it look really good video-wise. And that's all I really got for you. I'll see you guys tomorrow for Mo 8-Man football. And then when we come back on Friday, we'll have a weekend review thing. I'll kind of review a little bit what happened here because all the games happening on Thursday this week. Can't wait for tomorrow night in football. Thank you for listening, and I will see you tomorrow with 8-Man football here on Straight Up Sports. Make sure you follow us at show_straight and me on Twitter at Devin Albertson.